welcome to a very special edition of Pastor's Perspective. I'm your host, Brian Perez. Why is it special? Well, today is our flagship radio stations. I can't even speak anymore. It's our flagship radio station's anniversary. 40 years today. April 15th, 1985 was the launch date, and today is April 15th, 2025. We've had some amazing guests come through the studios today, and a bunch of people from on staff at Calvary Costa Mesa came over, and just a fun day so far. And today, we're answering your questions like we always do. But if you have specific stories, testimonies about the impact K-Wave has made on your life, give us a call too. 888-564-6173 is the number to call. I'm wearing this little thing on top of my head, so is Pastor Brian, and it feels like it's going to fall off. So that'll be interesting when it just falls off my head, and I don't know. But Bobby didn't get one. Bobby Conway, we should have mailed you one. You could have been wearing it right now too. Maybe we can Photoshop it in later or something. I don't know.
Well, you guys look great.
Thank you. Thank you. Are you jealous? No. Anyway. So, 40 years. You were here at the outset, weren't you?
40 years.
When you were 9 years old, you walked in here. And,
I was. Yeah, I was. I did a little interview with...
My hat fell off. I knew it was going to happen.
Get that back on. I'm not going to be the only one sitting here with this looking foolish like this. Yes. Anyway, I did an interview this morning with Bob Shaw, which was really fun, and we did talk a little bit about the, the story of kind of just acquiring the station. Back in those days, Pastor Chuck and Kay, Cheryl and I lived down in Vista in North San Diego County, and of course, Pastor Chuck lived up here. And he called us one day and said, hey, we're going to buy this radio station, and it's located in San Clemente, so why don't you guys meet us? So we drove up, they drove down, and we met them at the Ramada Inn off of the 5 freeway in San Clemente, and lo and behold, that was the beginning of what we're celebrating 40 years of today. So, so that was great. And, Pastor Chuck had been involved in radio ministry with the Word for Today for some years on a variety of different stations. And, but obviously God really had given him a vision for radio. And so, when this opportunity came, purchased the station. At that point, I'd only been pastoring a few years. I'd never, I hadn't done any radio at all. And, Chuck said to me, hey, you should put a program together. And I said, how do you do that?
Yeah.
So, and Bob was asking me about Back to Basics. How did you come up with that name? And I said, well, I sat down and I kind of just thought about my ministry, and I felt like that's kind of a description of kind of my approach to Bible teaching and so forth. Plus, there was a musician back in those days, and his name was Benny Hester, and he had an album that was called Back to Basics, and I really liked that album, and there was, kind of the song, there was a song on the album Back to Basics, and so I reached out to Benny and said, hey, I'm putting together a radio program. Could I use that? And he said, yeah, sure, that would be great. So, so it all came together. And I was saying to Bob, I have been broadcasting myself for 40 years on the station. So that's unbelievable.
So how many theme songs has Back to Basics gone through over the years? I was going to say.
A lot. We have had a lot, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's been...
Yeah, we had that Back to Basics song. We had a instrumental for years, a Level 42 song. We had a song by Malcolm
Level 42, really?
Yeah.
The Level 42?
Yeah, the Level 42.
Cool.
They had a great little instrumental thing. We had Fool's Wisdom by Malcolm and
that's when I started listening.
Yeah. And then we had a song by the band Smithfield. Which was...
I've heard of them.
The band of...
The guy was just here.
Pastor Char. Yes. And then, then we actually had something after that. And now we have the current song that we have. And we might be changing that too.
What?
So, yeah. Hey, in 40 years, you can You can rotate
That's right.
through some songs,
It's true.
Pastor Chuck's program, of course, had the same song for many, 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 many years. And they've recently changed the song.
Yes, they have.
Very nostalgic.
Yes.
Going back to the love song days with Little Country Church. So, yeah.
Yes, indeed. That was fun when we made that transition a couple of weeks ago on the theme song. The thing about Pastor Chuck, he has a radio voice himself, right?
Yeah.
So I always thought that maybe, this is just my thinking when I first started working here and listening to him and thinking, you know what? I wonder if, like years ago when he was a kid and then became a teenager and his voice changed, whatever, and he's like, you know what? I want to do radio, but the Lord had a different thing in mind. Just like with Dr. David Jeremiah, that's sort of his story, where he wanted to be a radio DJ.
Did he
but the
really?
Lord, yes, he did. And did it in college and everything, but he felt that the Lord. So anyway, getting back to Pastor Chuck, I just always wondered if maybe it was one of those, he had this great voice, and it like maybe as a kid he wanted to do radio, and so all these years later he was just like, wow, I'm doing radio, just in a different way.
Yeah, I don't think that was his story, but of course he did. Chuck sang. He loved singing. He recorded a couple of albums actually, but he does still. We hear him daily. His voice, it's just one of those kind of voices that you envy.
Yes,
and you wish you had a voice. When I was young, I think it was before K-Wave. It was definitely before K-Wave because I was here at the time, and we used to do a Sunday. The Sunday morning service was aired live on KYMS, which was a local Christian station.
I worked there.
And you worked there, okay? And,
but not when
okay.
The church
and so we had the Sunday thing, and we had to. We were the presenters, some of the guys. And one day Chuck says to me, I like your voice. You should go up and give that a try. And so I did that for Sunday morning for a while.
Yeah.
And I don't think I have a good radio voice, but Chuck thought I did. So if Chuck said I had a good radio voice.
Yeah, if Chuck said it,
I better get in there and do it.
It's gospel.
Yes.
That's right.
Now, Bobby, you have a
somebody's
story
in here trying to not sabotage, trying to
it's another Chuck
blackmail us with these photos with these crazy hats on. So
yes, oh boy, there it goes. Bobby, you have a story of how K-Wave impacted you when you first.
I'm taking this crazy hat off.
Well, then fine. No, I'll keep.
You keep yours on.
I'm going to keep mine on a little bit longer. I'll win the dare.
I talked to the boss, and they said make sure Brian keeps his hat on.
Oh man, okay.
They can't tell me what to do anymore.
So, Bobby, what's your story of how K-Wave impacted you in your early years as a believer when you first came to Jesus?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Is there a particular story that you're thinking of?
Well, I remember, like you've told the story of the lady at your job who came up to you and gave you Pastor Brian Broderson's cassette tape. And it wasn't the radio program per se, but it was Brian's teaching. And all these years later, you wound up working with the guy.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, it was, I started listening to K-Wave probably in 1993. And that is true. That's a really cool story right there. And for those that haven't heard, I was going through a dark season of spiritual warfare, but I had no idea what that even was. And there was this Christian lady at the Ritz-Carlton where I worked in Dana Point. And she said, I think what you're describing sounds like spiritual warfare. And I wanted to know more about it. And then the next week she comes to work and she said, a package showed up at my house and I believe that the Lord sent it for you. And so she gives me the package and she said she never even ordered it, just showed up in the mail. And so I don't know if...
Oh, those Amazon drivers. Oh, wait, no, this was before Amazon, huh?
Yeah, so she gives me the tape and it was entitled Spiritual Warfare by Brian Broderson. And he talked about the 5 wiles of the devil. And it was that very tape that would lead me out of that deep, dark night. Because I was literally the guy, I was sleeping in my parents' family room with the lights on because of the things that were happening in the dark. It was just crazy, the kind of shadows and just bed shaking, and there was so much weird stuff going on. And then I listened to that tape, and then I had my dad listen to it because he thought I was losing my mind. And I was like, no, Dad, listen to this tape. And then I couldn't wait to fly to Arkansas to share it with Heather. And she picked me up at the airport. And when I stuck it in her cassette tape as we were leaving, the tape got 8 on the spot. I was just like, well. But then all these years later, it would have been, 25 years after the fact, I met Pastor Brian at Calvary Chapel at Murrieta and told him that story and how the Lord used that in my life. And I think that, it's just kind of cool because I think maybe in some ways God gave me favor before Pastor Brian by giving me a tape 25 years ago and telling him the story, and he saw God at work. So it was really cool.
Wow. I love that. I'm so thankful for that. Which, of course, I didn't know anything about until you told me when we met. But but that's the thing with radio. Earlier we were talking about some of the special moments, and one of the things I said was just I have met numerous people, too many to count, over the years who have been touched. Some people coming to faith through the ministry of K-Wave, others having such really significant moments where God has spoken to them through the teaching. And the fruitfulness of this station, I think, is it's something that we really will never know about ultimately until we're on the other side, because I think God has just used it extraordinarily. And funny thing is sometimes today, and of course with technology and all the advances of technology and being on the World Wide Web and having the app, I'll talk to people in other parts of the world and they'll say, on Pastor's Perspective, you were saying this. I'm like, wait, what are you doing? How are you listening? And then, they're on the app. So yeah, what a great thing.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the other funny thing about technology is years ago I would occasionally get asked, out in public or something, hey, you're the guy on the radio, right? And it's like, yeah. So, but lately it's more, hey, you're the guy from Pastor's Perspective. Yes. Oh, we watch you every day on Facebook or YouTube. And I'm like, you're watching. They're not listening. They're watching. So hello to you guys that are watching us on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. It's just these wonders of modern technology that continue to expand and grow, and so do we. And, AM 1110 reaching now the greater Los Angeles area, and just so much going on.
Yeah, and the AM story is a great story, too, because, for many, many, many years, back in the time of Pastor Chuck was alive, we always were trying to figure out a way to get a stronger signal into LA, and there were reasons technically that we could never really get it done. And for whatever reason, it was just one of those things that just continued to be something on my heart. I just think, man, LA, the population is so huge and the need is so great. And lo and behold, a couple of years ago now, an opportunity came our way. We never were able to get the signal issue sorted out, but the Lord opened the door for us to buy an LA station, which is just tremendous.
Yep.
And so, 1110, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we've been on air with 1110 how long now?
About a year and a half now.
Year and a half.
Yeah. So in 38 and a half years, we'll have a 40th anniversary party just for AM 1110.
Yeah, we'll be right here.
Yes. Yes, we will. Wearing hats that say 80 I guess 40 for AM. Anyway, 888-564-6173 is the number to call if you've got a question to ask on Pastor's Perspective with Brian Brodersen and Bobby Conway today. Also, if you want to share a story about K-Wave, that'd be great too. There's also another way that you can send in your stories. If you go to kwave.com, click on the 40 banner there. There's lots of great stuff there that you can look at and listen to, and also a way for you to share your story either as a text message or as or text message / email, or as a voice recording or as a video recording. All the details are at kwave.com on the 40 banner. Also, right after we're done here at 4 o'clock on the K-Wave Facebook page, not the Pastor's Perspective Facebook page, but only on the K-Wave Facebook page. We're going to have a 40th anniversary live stream party out here in the hallway. We wish we could invite all of you to come to the party, but the studio's not that big. So you can watch online on the K-Wave Facebook page right after we're done here at 3:58 or whatever. Give us a couple of minutes or a couple of seconds and switch over to the K-Wave Facebook page. Not YouTube, but K-Wave Facebook page. That's where you can watch the live stream party hosted by our very own Madison Smith and Chuck Lopez. All right, let's go to the phones now. 888-564-6173. Dave and Tustin's got a story. What is it, Dave?
Hey, guys. How you doing?
Doing well, thanks.
Good, thank you.
Great. So, yeah, in the late 80s, I lived in Palm Springs, and I went to Chuck's church in Costa Mesa. And I wasn't a believer at the time. And then I moved to Orange County in late 92. And I had Howard Stern on one end of the radio. And then I was channel surfing and heard Chuck Smith, who I heard, in 3 years before that. And I recognized his voice. So I started listening in, and I still wasn't a believer. And so then I had Howard Stern on one end of the radio and K-Wave on the other, and eventually K-Wave won out, and I became a believer through listening to Chuck and Chuck Missler and Chuck Swindoll, and then Brian, I used to listen to you all the time too, and still do, and then now it's great to see your three generations of that with Char on.
Yeah,
cool.
That's great, Dave.
So,
I love those stories.
Yeah, it's a great story.
Yeah.
And I've been listening ever since, pretty much.
That's awesome.
So do you still listen to Howard Stern, or?
I know. No, I still no more Howard Stern. But what was the name of the Pastor's Perspective show on back then?
It started out as To Every Man an Answer.
Yeah, I thought so. That was great. It was a good show, and definitely very informational, and this one, you guys are doing a great job, by the way. I really like your show.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Dave.
Yeah, thanks for calling in today here on Pastor's Perspective at 888-564-6173. Josh in San Diego has got a question for us today. What is it, Josh?
Good afternoon, gentlemen. I have been reading Psalm 34 for the past, actually, several days, and I would love your perspective on the notion of the fear of the Lord. I can I think I understand it cerebrally, but how does that play out in one's day-to-day Christian walk when we don't have the pillar of smoke or the fire or idols of Baal being consumed? We live in a world that doesn't really day-to-day instill fear of God, especially being an 80s kid growing up with a flannel graph and Jesus surrounded by lambs and God the Father. Kind of help me understand how I can make that connection between my head and heart and truly understand and walk day to day in that fear of the Lord.
All right, Bobby, what would you say to Josh?
That's a great question. And I think that, one of the things that can happen the longer that we're Christians, familiarity can breed kind of apathy if we're not careful, because, you start reading the Bible over and over and over again. And at one point you're reading it for the first time and it just blows you away. And there's just something about our human nature that no matter what we have, we can take it for granted, even God himself. You can get that beautiful house and you can be in awe of that. Or you can, meet that girl and be in awe. Or you can have those kids and be in awe, get that new car, and even in the Christian life. And so there's something about character that has to learn how to appreciate things for the long haul. Appreciate that spouse for the long haul. Appreciate those kids for the long haul. Appreciate not feeling like you have to update something all the time. And so part of fear, though, is recognizing what it means, and it's a respect, and so it's an awe. It's not like like you're freaking out. I mean, it can be, but it's more it's that. And so I think that when we stand in awe of him and recognize how great he is, then that can really motivate us to walk in his ways and believe his ways are best. But if we begin to take him for granted, which I think that we can all do as Christians, I know I can do that. And there comes moments where maybe that I need a new book on the holiness of God, or maybe I need to get honest with God and say, you know what, Lord, I'm at a stage in my life where I feel like I'm getting too comfortable with you. I don't stand in awe. I miss those early days. Help me to figure out what's going on. I want to appreciate you. And so just take your thoughts of maybe what it is that you feel like is causing you to not stand maybe in awe, and identify those things, and then pray about them, and then say, God, is there a book, or is there a pathway? Is there an empowerment? Is there a way that I can go about a renewed appreciation? And that's just the way it is. I mean, marriages constantly have to find that sense of, awe for each other, so to speak, when they get in a rut. So I think it's just part of the life cycle, and we just have to realize that when we start getting that way, though, it is dangerous because we can get off mark.
Pastor Brian.
Yeah, I think that, like Bobby's saying, we do go through these different seasons for sure, where we are really attuned to spiritual things, and we're kind of just in awe of everything about the Lord and everything that surrounds him. You're reading scripture and you're just like, oh my gosh, this is just so amazing. And then there's other times where you're reading it and you're just like, okay, I got to get through this because I got to go do this or that. I mean, that's just a reality in the Christian life. But to not let that go to a place where it just becomes the norm, I think you have to be, like Bobby's saying, I think you do have to be intentional. And, so fear of the Lord, the awe of God is what we're talking about. We're not talking about being afraid of God, but we're just talking about standing. It would be like standing next to a person that you just absolutely admired or looked up to, somebody who had a profound impact on your life, or they did something so significant in history or something that you're just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that I'm in the presence of this person. Well, that's Jesus. He's the one who outdid everybody. And I think that to just get ourselves to kind of go back, and sometimes to just force ourselves to think about that. Creation helps to do that, to ponder the heavens, to ponder the just all the glorious things that surround us that we so often take for granted. We don't even think about it. My wife is amazing like this. She will just be, she'll just look at a tree, and then she'll start talking about a tree, and she'll talk about photosynthesis, and she'll talk about, the leaves of the tree bringing down the moisture into the roots, and and then the Lord did this, and and I'm just standing there like, wow, I just thought it was a tree, and I was moving on to the next thing. And, so I think, Bobby, like you're saying, there has to be some intentionality to kind of prime ourselves toward that, and to continue to do that. And like you said, too, I think sometimes reading a great book that takes you and gives you deeper insight into. Last night, I was at Biola University, and I was there for the world premiere of the documentary film on the first hymn.
Yeah.
So, Bobby, our friend John Dixon, he's been working on this thing for a couple of years, where about 100 years ago, they discovered this little piece of papyri in Oxy, Rankin, Egypt. And it was just a little tiny clip that had lyrics and melody to a song that was sung, 1,800 years ago by the Christians in Egypt. And John's been working on telling the story of this, and then also been working together with Ben Fielding and Chris Tomlin on recreating the song for today. And I'll tell you, we sat through the whole documentary. All of it was so fascinating, so profound. And then we sang the song together, a whole auditorium full of people at Biola. We sang that first hymn together, and that was an awe-inspiring moment. It was like, wow, this is really special. So, yeah, so look for opportunities to just sort of intentionally engage ourselves in the things that inspire awe.
Yeah, Bobby.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so good. I'm looking forward to seeing that. I think just becoming really aware, in a lot of this stuff has to get hashed out in prayer, and then prayer can be a challenge itself, right? Because I've noticed with prayer that I can be pretty lazy about it and get mundane and routine. But when I really set my heart in a posture of prayer and just sit with God and go there, it's pretty cool, because one of the things that, and I don't know how it works for everybody, but I know for me, I cannot express, like, if I spend some earnest time in prayer for 20 or 30 minutes, at a time, which can be hard when you got ADD, like just really focused on prayer. I mean, I've had seasons where, praying an hour a day, but I get off track or I get bored. But I've had the presence of God come to me in prayer. And that's pretty special when I think about that link up, because there's just something about fellowshipping with God that he delights in it. And I wish I'd prayed better. I wish I sought his heart more fervently. I wish I wasn't so distracted, because that is when you get the presence of God. It's like, wow, this is real, right? Because you can read your Bible and it can be dry, but it's really special when you have a moment when you're even singing songs. Like, there's something about singing. I think God just really responds when he knows we're delighting in prayer, when we're delighting in worship. And those are the moments where I felt his presence. And that makes sense. If the Christian worldview is true, that from time to time, you might get a spiritual buzz of him saying, yeah, I like that. I'm with you.
So to find out more information about the First Hymn Project, you can go to John Dickson's website. It's undeceptions.com, and you can, that's John Dickson's website anyway, but he's got a special page there about the First Hymn Project.
Yeah, and I'm not sure. So last night was the world premiere of the film, and tonight they are actually showing it at the Museum of the Bible in Washington, D.C. So I'm not sure when it's going to be available, to the public, or just exactly how John's going to put it out.
Right.
But it is worth the watch. It is absolutely amazing, just the story itself. So there's a great little trailer. You can watch the trailer at the website. But yeah.
So it's not cheesy.
No, it's not at all. They did a really good job with it. Yeah, really, really good.
We would not be promoting it if it was cheesy. Bobby Conway, you shouldn't have.
Yeah, no, that's great. No, Brian knows what I'm saying with like Christian films.
Oh yes,
you hate the thought, but sometimes they're just cheesy.
888-564-6173 is the number to call us today on Pastor's Perspective. And don't forget the live stream party happening on the K-Wave Facebook page at 4 o'clock. You can still RSVP to be in part of that, and you might win a prize from us here at K-Wave, but you're not going to win my little hat. Or maybe we should give away my little hat. I don't know. That might be
I'll give away mine.
Okay. Yeah. Pastor Brian wants to give away his little hat.
Second half, you can have my hat.
There we go. 888-564-6173. Welcome back to Pastor's Perspective. I'm Brian Perez. It is the 40th anniversary of K-Wave, not the 40th anniversary of Pastor's Perspective. Although Pastor's Perspective has been around for, 22 years. Before that, it was To Every Man an Answer. But Pastor's Perspective itself, about 21 or 22 years now, I think.
Yeah, I think 2003 maybe, or 4, we changed. So To Every Man an Answer, what was the program? I was on it since 2000 with Pastor Chuck and others, Don Stewart. Mm-hmm. And, Don actually came on in 2009, but before that, anyway, it was what it was. But in 2004, I think, 3 or 4, we took a break. Were you here then?
I came in early 2004,
okay.
Part of 2003. So
okay, so there
I think it was 03.
Yeah, there was a point where we, I can't remember the exact reason, but we took a break for a summer. Mm-hmm. And when the summer ended, Pastor Chuck was kind of vacillating about whether we should, go forward with the program and so forth. And I just said, you know what, look, I think this is a great program. I think a lot of people appreciate it. So I do think we should go. I think we should reboot it. And I said, let's change the name and let's call it Pastor's Perspective. And I like that. So that's how it happened. I just thought, hey, this is what we're doing. We're pastors and we're giving our perspective on the program. So that's how the name came.
Perfect. 888-564-6173. Rich in Rancho Cucamonga. Hi there. Welcome to the program. Rich, are you there? I think Rich has his radio on. Okay, we'll come back to Rich. Instead, let's go to Dahlia in Anaheim watching us on YouTube. Hi there, Dahlia. Do you like our hat? If you're watching us on YouTube. By the way, Pastor Brian gave away his hat already, so it's not up for grabs during the live stream party. Mine, I don't know if I want to part with mine, but anyway. Dahlia, welcome to the program.
Hi.
Hi, what's going on?
So excited to be on today. Just wanted to share my testimony, how K-Wave played such a crucial role in my life. I grew up fundamentalist, legalistic, Pentecostal, and wanted nothing to do with church.
Wow.
And
were you even allowed to listen to the radio at all? I mean, I just wonder.
No, I wasn't, actually. We didn't have TV. We didn't have radio. I wore long skirts and long sleeve shirts all the way up to my neck and wasn't allowed to wear makeup. It was pretty bad.
Wow.
So needless to say, when I became a teenager, I ran as far away from God as I could. Married, wanted nothing to do with God, told everybody I was an atheist. Then I married an unbeliever, of course, that had nothing to do with Christians. And then I had children. And so, yeah.
Are you still there, Dahlia?
I'm here. Sorry. And so when I had my kids, something changed in my mind. Something changed. And occasionally there would be this voice that would ask me, so do you believe in God? And I'd be like, nope. I don't know where this is coming from. I don't believe in God. Leave me alone. And then there would be another voice that would say, because I loved my kids more than anything. And so then this voice would ask me, what if there is a hell? Are you okay with them going to hell? And it would just come to me, like when I would be with my kids, like putting them to sleep or whatever.
Wow.
And then I got scared. I got super scared. And I said, okay, you know what I'm going to do just to cover my bases? I'm going to buy a little Bible and read to them every now and then. And so I started, I would read to them every now and then because it made me feel better. And so then I drive a lot for work, and I was, just kind of channel surfing, and Pastor Chuck came on, and he was talking about the love of God. And I said, oh, that's heresy, because I've been to those churches, and God is nothing but love. Like, he's not love at all.
Wow.
He's not love, and I'd be like, oh my gosh, it's heresy. I can't believe they preach that, and then, but every now and then I would want to listen, like, okay. And I'd be like, okay, just listen, how ridiculous they are. And so then I had my kids in the back, and my son, when he was 3 years old, we were in the back, and he started asking me, he'd say, Mom, can you put on the nice man? And I'd be like, what nice man, And so I put it on. Yeah, I'm like, I'm worldly, so I'd put it on Power 106 or something else. I'd be like, the DJ, and then I was looking one time.
It wasn't Howard Stern, that's for sure.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, and so then I put it on. I thought, oh my gosh, I wonder if it's that guy that I listened to. I didn't think he was paying attention. And I put it on, Pastor Chuck. Yeah,
Wow.
and then he says, Mom, that's the nice man. And I was like, oh. And he would get in the car and he would say, Mom, can we listen to the nice man?
Oh my
and I would
gosh.
listen. And it just started pouring over me and just washed me like no other. And it just, like I said, I was married to an unbeliever, and that became the biggest battle. It was either God or be married. And I wanted to stay married. I wanted to provide a intact family for my kids. And so I stayed, and we would what we would do is we would go on drives whenever that was our church. Our car became our church, and we would just listen. And God just did His magic. He did the work. He changed my heart. He saved my children. I'm no longer married because he was not a good man. He just wanted nothing to do with it. But I'm grateful for the faith and the way God used that to save me and my family. So I'm super grateful to Pastor Chuck, to your ministries. God works. I mean, and I'm proof of it.
Well, Dahlia, that is one of the best stories
You made our
I've
day.
heard in a long time. I love it. And man, the nice man. Can we listen to the nice man?
good.
Yeah.
I love that. I'm going to tell my wife that. She's going to just be so blessed by that.
Yep.
Yeah. I still fought it, for a long time because I wanted to stay married. But no, at the end, I was married for 25 years, but at the end, he made me choose either God or him. And my kids and I said, we're choosing God, and we are following faithfully. And I'm so grateful.
Wow. So how old is the one who was 3 years old at the time? How old is that one now?
He's 28, and he's getting married in June.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for calling in and sharing that story. That is amazing. And you can still hear that nice man here on K-Wave twice a day, 7:30 a.m. and 12 noon throughout the weekend as well. So amazing.
Well, it's really, it's so interesting to hear Dahlia talk about her own kind of, growing up in that radical legalism and just how it served to really push her away. And, but then to discover that wasn't God at all. It was a misrepresentation of God.
Yeah.
And, Bobby, it reminds me of Ayaan Hirsi Ali. If when you listen to her story, she grew up in a fundamentalist Islamic context, and she was the same way. She became probably the world's most famous female atheist. But she also went through a crisis in her life that brought her to faith. But when she was going through to her counselor asked her if she, ever thought about believing in God, trying to help her, because she was having such a horrible time in life at that point. And she says, "Oh, I hate God. God's a monster. I don't want to know. I don't even want. Let's not even talk about God." And then the counselor pressed a little bit and said, "Well, if you could kind of create your own God, what would that be like?" And she started thinking about it, and she started kind of giving a description. And she says she realized she was describing Jesus, and she became a believer. So,
Yeah, so cool. I love that story.
isn't that a great story?
It is
But
a great
Dahlia
story.
has
I love
reminded me of it a little bit in different contexts. But Yeah, so
That's
good.
great. And thank God for Christian counselors. That book again called Infidel by Ayaan Hirsi Ali. Ayaan, is that how you say her name?
Yeah, and this book is not.
No, it's not new.
No, and her conversion has recently happened. So this. But this is her story about leaving Islam.
Oh, got
You
it.
read this, right, Bobby? You read Infidel?
Yeah, I did. I read a few of her books
I see.
over the last couple of weeks, and I loved that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so she's written quite a few. I thought it was just that one. But yeah, check it out. Her name is Ayaan, Ayaan, Hirsi Ali. All right, 888-564-6173. Ken in Laguna Hills. How can we help you today? What's your story?
Hi, guys. I just wanted to call in and share some love and some gratefulness for your year and just give you just a thumbs up and cheer you on as you guys truly are so beneficial to all. And I started listening to the station about 28 years ago. And that was when it was To Every Man an Answer. And just the formation that you caused by this program on my life is astounding. I have a child that is 28 years old now, and he is in Cedar City, Utah, and he goes to Calvary Chapel under Pastor Joe Carroll, and that I believe is a ministry that Chuck started, and I'm grateful for that. I, in full disclosure, have to say that it's your fault on this station that I am a pastor now, because had it not been for you all, I would have questioned the call and said, you got the wrong guy, which I did anyways, and he made it abundantly clear that it was for me to do. But my child went away to Utah, to faraway land, as it were, and he went to a Lutheran church where that's what I'm a pastor of, and he says, Dad, I just can't. I just can't. And he says, but there's a Calvary Chapel there. He goes, are they okay? And I said, buddy, you've been listening to them since you were very, very young. And he rolled his eyes so hard, he probably saw the back of his head, and he said, I know. And, I'm just so grateful for you guys. And Pastor Brian, thank you for you. And Pastor Bobby, I'll say this, as far as pastoral care and the way that you handle callers of all sorts, you are so kind and so gifted and just so loving, the way that you listen to questions. And I want to be like you when I grow up. And there are a commonality. I'm a graduate of Chico State, and I heard you say that you went to Chico State, and so I'm just grateful for everything.
I was a dropout of Chico State.
Well, I'm to Chico State. Not everybody.
I lasted about 5 weeks.
Yeah. Well, it was a lot of fun, and I guess, but we are walking with the Lord. My family and I. We came back to church in around 1995, I guess, when a child was born, and it was catastrophic. He didn't live past his 10th birthday. But anyway, I thank you for what you guys do, and I'm grateful for the pastors. Pastor Damien out of Modesto was amazing for me, and as was Pastor Bob Coy. I pray he's okay. Pray for him every time I think of him.
Wow, that's great.
That he is restored, and that's about it. It's not the Ken Show, but thank you guys for hearing me.
Thanks, Ken.
Thank
That's,
you, bud. Appreciate it, Ken.
a lot of encouragement there.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
for sure. 888-564-6173 is our number. Let's go to Mark in Newport Beach. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, what did you want to ask?
So I'm of lately, just someone sent me the documentary To God and Country. So I'm trying to understand a little bit of that particular movement. I guess there's a movement that describes itself as a Christian nationalist. I also recently was issued a book by Jim Wallace called The False White Gospel. So I'm trying to wrap my head around it. Is it something that I need to be aware of, to try to get an understanding, or just keep away from it?
All right, Bobby Conway, what do you know about these?
Well, I do think that when it comes to a certain version of Christian nationalism, in the pejorative sense, you're looking at sort of a Christian dominionism where, you're trying to kind of almost be like a theocratic country, so to speak, God and country. And we're not a theocracy. Now, there's lots of different, depending upon who you talk to, you might get one explanation of what Christian nationalism is. But I think that probably the agreed upon point that would concern some people is this dominionism idea. We're to be salt and we're to be light in the culture, but we aren't to go and cancel off the culture in the name of Christianity. We're to love the culture in the name of Christianity. And so sometimes what happens is people put too much stock in government. Other times people become passive and don't even think that their vote matters. And I think that that place between our vote matters and not, putting your ultimate trust in government, but realizing that God is sovereign over it and not trying to impose, God on people. I think that that's right. And I'm sensitive to that because I wouldn't want, this is what I struggled with the whole LGBTQ and the CRT. It became something of a religion in our culture where people were cramming it down our throats. And now I would say equally, we have to be careful that we don't start cramming other things down people's throats. We have to find a way to live together and respect each other's differences and let us live it out. And I think what we're feeling even right now is it's like a back and forth. I'm going to cancel everything you put in place, and then I'm going to put this in place. And if you don't go by it, you're going to be canceled. And it's a back and forth, and it's a vulnerable place where we are.
Pastor Brian.
Yeah, I think it's, sometimes I think the Christian nationalist thing it's overblown, and it's sometimes it just it can be a person who just expresses any kind of patriotism. Somebody says, it's Christian nationalism, and I think we need to be careful with that because that's not what we're talking about. Christian nationalism, I'm not saying it doesn't exist; it does exist, but sometimes you would think that everybody's a Christian nationalist. Anybody who is a Republican, especially, is a Christian nationalist. People would say, and I think that this is kind of too far. So you just have to be careful. But I think the God and country thing I think is problematic as well. I think you have to really be careful because you can start. You kind of have a vision for the country that the country ought to be this and go this way and not that way and so forth. And you can start adopting some ideas that are not really consistent with what the Bible teaches and what it is like to be a Christian and how to function and behave in society as a Christian. So you really have to be wise with these things, I think. You asked about Jim Wallace's book. I've met Jim Wallace. I would not agree with him on a bunch of things, but I would imagine if I read that book, I'd probably disagree with a bunch of it. But I probably would agree with some of it too. Jim grew up in kind of a context of the Black church and saw, in the 60s and during that period, he saw a lot of the really, really dark stuff that had to do with the racism and all of that. And so that's kind of his perspective that he's going to be talking from. And so there's some valid stuff to what he says. Theologically, he tends to be more liberal in his theology. And so his sociology I wouldn't necessarily disagree with. His theology I would more disagree with.
Mark, thank you for your phone call today on Pastor's Perspective. We've got a few minutes left. Let's see how many of these calls we can get to. William in Azusa, listening on the K-Wave app. Thank you, William, for downloading the K-Wave app and for calling in today.
Good afternoon, guys. Just want to give a gratitude and thankfulness for you guys, and just wondering whatever happened to you on a day like this. I guess commemorative, but Tony Clark, is he ever going to come and guest speak again?
Well, that's his decision. You know, we were all kind of surprised when Tony told us that his time on the program had come to a conclusion, and he had other priorities and things. So, but Tony's a good friend of mine. We've been friends for, close to 40 years, almost as long as this radio station's been around. And I do stay in touch with him. So he's doing well, but he hasn't indicated that he wants to jump back on with us at any point. So
the door is always open for Tony.
Always open.
Yep. Tony, come back. Amber in Oklahoma. Hi, Amber. Welcome to Pastor's Perspective. You're listening to us in Oklahoma.
Yes, thank you so much. We've been listening since 2009 or so, and we used to live in Riverside, California for many, many years. Actually, all our life. So just wanted to say thank you. We rededicated our life to the Lord back in 2009, me and my husband, and it was just always an encouragement to find this station, turn it on, listen in my car, and just extra support on our walk with Jesus. And just thank you so much for helping us stay focused, fill our mind, and guard our hearts. And it's just been an honor to be able to listen to you, even out of California.
So you listen on the K-Wave app?
Yes. And, the app, and listen to it. My young kids can listen in, and it's just been 16 years now, and love to turn on K-Wave to hear different pastors and your pastor's perspective. Just wonderful to listen to and get our questions answered. So thank you.
Well, Amber, thank you for calling in today. Speaking of kids, something that we've had since almost the very beginning here on K-Wave is the Saturday Morning Kids Show. It's on every Saturday morning, of course. That's why we call it the Saturday Morning Kids Show. Saturday mornings from 7 to 9 on K-Wave 107.9 and AM 1110. So check that out.
And the app.
Yes, if you're in Oklahoma or wherever. Vicky in San Juan Capistrano, welcome to Pastor's Perspective.
Yes, this is Miss Vicky. I want to let you know I've been hearing you since 40 years, off and on. I repented of my sins, turned away from my sins. I listen to you almost 24/7. I wake up at night and listening to a word that might minister to my soul and spirit. And I tell you, it helps me to stay on a straight and narrow with Jesus Christ. And through you all, I have discernment that you guys preach God's word. You do not add or take away. I would rather take your word than the politics.
Well, good. I think that's a wise choice.
I'm following Jesus. I'm his servant, and we are the light of the world, not of dark. We're going to outshine the darkness someday.
Amen.
Well, Vicky, thank you for calling in and sharing your story. So 40 years today. When we're done here with this video, if you're watching us online, make sure to switch over to the K-Wave Facebook page for our live stream party. It's going to go on from 4 to 5. If you're watching Pastor's Perspective right now on the K-Wave Facebook page, it'll be a different video, not the same one, so you'll have to click out and click back in or something like that. I don't know exactly how it works, but any closing thoughts, Pastor Brian?
Yeah, I just, feel bad that Bobby's all the way on the other side of the country, and he's not going to be able to join the
he's not
party.
Wearing a hat. He didn't get a hat.
Yeah.
And I'm sure he's going to sit right there and get on the Facebook page, though, because he's not going to want to miss this. This is going to be dynamite.
Well, you guys are just going to be eating ice cream and, making me...
That's right.
Let's have an ice cream eating party, Pastor Brian.
I love that. Bobby and we're going to sign up for that. In all seriousness, I want to just say how thankful I am for this radio station, thankful that God led us all those years ago, to purchase that little station in San Clemente, California.
Yep.
And now, to be able to cover the majority of Southern California with our broadcast, I just think is amazing. So we're very thankful to the Lord, and we're very thankful for our audience.
Yes.
And we on this program are very thankful for the people that call in every day.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you all. God bless you, and keep calling. We'll keep answering.
Yep, we'll be here tomorrow from 3 to 4 p.m. Pacific time, and we welcome your phone calls at 888-564-6173. And I have a note here. Pastor's Perspective started in September 2003. That was when it launched. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, 2003.
Yep, September 2003. Very good. So let's do it again tomorrow. Let's do it again for another 40 years and beyond. Thank you so much for listening and for watching. And again, go to the K-Wave Facebook page at 4 o'clock. That's when our live stream party begins. God bless you guys. For Brian Broderson and Bobby Conway, I'm Brian Perez. See ya.